Hello and welcome to FPS Coach. My name's Rambo Kim, and this is episode 2 of Q&A. You guys submitted some awesome questions in my comment section of the first episode, so I'll be answering those. And again, guys, if you want to submit your questions and get featured on one of these episodes, please try to be more specific and concise because those really broad questions are difficult to answer. So here we go. Our first question is, what do you think are the prime years or age for players that want to get into FPSs seriously and compete and play at a very high level? For example, if someone is maybe 26-year-old, decent at FPS and wants to make a career out of it competitively, but has never had any past experience or competitive play, realistically, is it worth it for someone at that age to invest time and effort into improving to get into that top level and make a career out of it? Or do you think at that age it is highly unlikely? So typically the average age of professional gamers is around 17 to 22. I would say that goes across the board for all games, whether that's MOBAs, RTSs, FPSs, or whatever. And most of them have been playing through high school or even before during middle school. So they're lucky to live with their parents. They don't have any bills or rent to pay, and they're playing at home anytime they have a chance. So like outside of school or, on the weekends. And they have that luxury where they don't have to work. But when you get older and you move out or you have to pay your own bills and rent, you have to spend, most people spend, 8-9 hours a day full time at a job. So after that, you really don't have as much time to practice. And plus your energy level is really drained after work. So that's the typical range, 17 to 22, and they've been living with their parents. And past that age, I think it's not impossible to become professional. I just think the big factor is if you have the time to be able to put in, because there simply is no shortcut around it. I mean, if you look at any other sport or any profession where you're competing for a living, you have people that are playing or practicing 8 to 10 hours all day, every day. So if you don't have any experience and you're trying to get to that pro level, you've got a lot of catching up to do. But again, it's not impossible. It's just, do you have that 8 to 10 hours a day, every day, to play and practice and to get to that level? There are professional gamers now that are playing up past their 30-year-old mark. Some examples are Forrest. He had one of his best years in Counter-Strike Go last year. He put up phenomenal numbers at the major. And there's several players that have extended their careers all the way up to past 30 years old. So this brings us to our second question, which is related. It is, how many hours per day would it take for someone on average to go pro? And for how many years you would have to play, and how many hours per day? And generally the formula or recipe that I've seen is professionals have been playing either the same FPS game or another FPS game hardcore full time for about 2 years. So, again, most of them are in high school. Some of them also maybe been in college or taking a break after high school. They've been playing upwards of 40 hours per week and even more. So it's literally like a full-time job. They'll play anywhere from 5 to 8 hours per day, depending on, if they have school or if it's the weekend or they have a vacation break. So for me, I started playing in high school. So around 11th or 12th grade. That's when I started actually playing in tournaments locally and online and going to events. But I was playing any chance I could. So, after school, the first thing I'd do would come home and play games. On the weekends, I would go to LAN parties with my friends. Any hour, any minute I can squeeze in, I was playing. I would even wake up before school early to play. In order to reach that top professional level, the competition is super fierce. There's players out there that are playing even longer than that. They're playing 8 to 12 hours a day. So your competition is going to be very tough. It's not just about how well you can get better, but also beating everyone else. Our third question, I do warm up and feel my aim and it's good or okay. But when I play ranked or face it or whatever, my aim is very shaky and I struggle. How can I fix this issue? Okay, so when he warms up or he or she warms up, their aim feels really good, but when they start playing competitive matches or ranked matches, that's when their aim gets shaky. The major variable here is that now there's a mental or psychological shift of playing with just by yourself or nothing on the line, and now you're playing a competitive match. So you've got this shift in mentality where it's like, now I got to try, or now I'm playing with better people, or I might lose ranking points or whatever have you. And that's the major variable. So this is a difficult question to answer, but my best one would be you need to be able to relax and not force this pressure upon yourself, right? So it's like, oh, I'm joining the server, I'm going to play ranked, now it's time to go competitive. And now you're applying all this extra pressure on yourself, and that's translating into your aim. It's like you feel like you have to try harder, so now you have to do something different with your aim, right? But when you warm up, everything's good. Your mindset is not applying pressure to yourself, and your hands and your fingers they feel loose and relaxed. But then when you apply all this pressure, you get tense, and that's where all that shakiness comes from. So I think try to just relax a little bit more. Treat it like maybe it's just a warm up or there's nothing on the line. Try to shift your mind into that mindset. There are players out there that like to do that. For instance, K-Sharp, one of my former teammates, he was one of the best snipers of all time, one of the best North American Counter-Strike 1.6 players. And his mindset is try to be as carefree as possible. So when he played matches, like he was obviously super competitive, but he liked to put his headspace where he didn't play that pressure. And it was just like a normal game. And, when we would warm up during scrims and stuff, he was just really easygoing, relaxed, laughing and playful, where that approach does not work for me. I actually like being able to apply that pressure to myself and tell myself like, hey, now it's time to step up. Now it's go time. And that actually helps me. So maybe if you took K-Sharp's approach, that might help you out. Our next question is, how far can I get with CSGO matchmaking only? Because I don't have Faceit, ESCA, and or CEVO account, so I'm kind of left with normal matchmaking. Side note, I try not to play solo queue. So for those of you that don't play CSGO, Faceit, ESCA, and CEVO are third-party platforms and services that the competitive players go and play. They have anti-cheat services and they have higher tick rate servers. So the quality of gameplay and competition is much higher. And for other games, I'm not sure if they have these similar services or platforms. Some games have really good in-game matchmaking systems and anti-cheat, so you can just go ahead and play in those. But in CSGO, that's not the case. And I think if you want to become a competitive player or you have aspirations to become a professional, you want to gravitate towards these platforms and services. Obviously, you want to be making sure you're playing with players that aren't cheating and you're playing on good servers. But most importantly, I think that saying of you're only as good as your competition certainly stays true here, because if you are playing with and against higher level competition, it's going to give you immediate feedback on where your current skill level is at, so that you can understand where I need to improve, where these other players are, and kind of gauge my skill level. Also, when you do match solo and you're matched up with these competitive players, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn how other people play. Like when you're dead, you're spectating them, and you're going to learn new tips and tricks and angles and timings and plays that you would have never thought of. So you get to spectate and learn. And then also when you're playing against other players, they're going to be doing all these tips and tricks or plays or little things that catch you off guard. And that's something you can put into your gameplay. Our next question is tips on getting more known on ESCA and getting on teams. So I'll give you guys 3 tips, or the 3 biggest things that I think will help you guys get on a competitive team. One is you want to have a good reputation. You want to be someone that people have good things to say about. You're a good teammate, you contribute with good comms, you bring strat ideas, you're not a toxic player, you don't bitch, you don't whine, you don't blame others, right? So if people like you, they're going to want to have you on the team. The second thing is you can't really get around stats. I think stats, they don't tell the full story of the capability of a player. But, if you're having ridiculous KD ratio or average damage around or win-loss ratios, those go a long way. Like surface level, you can tell a lot about someone's skills in-game mechanically with those numbers. So, you want to try to boost those, but you don't want to do it in a way where you're baiting people or you're building bad habits or you're playing a play style that is padding your stats. So there's a fine line between looking good, but also developing your own gameplay. And the third thing is I would highly recommend streaming or at least uploading some kind of video highlight reel of your top gameplays or insane shots or something that just showcases your game skill to your social media accounts. Because if a team is looking to recruit and they land on one of your social accounts, well, you want to make it as easy as possible for them to see what your skill level is and what you're capable of. So make yourself as visible as possible. The more you're seen out there, the more opportunities you're going to get. Our next question is, you've mentioned visualization before and wondered if you visualize whilst playing. For example, if you're holding an angle with an op, do you visualize the enemy peeking or do you just keep a clear mind? So if I am holding an angle with a sniper, I do have an image in my mind of where that model would be if they peeked out. That allows me to put my crosshair in the right place. So I put it at headshot level, and depending on the angle, I give or take more or less slack. So, if I'm holding a particular angle, I may need to be right up against the wall with the crosshair, or I need to place a little bit further out because there's potential that they can swing out and cover more distance, right? So it kind of depends on the angle. But another answer that popped up when I'm reading this question is, what I do visualize when I'm playing is whenever I'm maneuvering through the map, I essentially have a wall hack in my head. For example, if I'm maneuvering and peeking an angle on a map, I can see the wall and the textures in front of me, but I can also see what's behind it at all times. And so I have essentially this like 3D radar wall hack in my head. So that helps me visualize how I need to place my crosshair, and also helps me gauge where potential enemies can be, so I know certain spacings and timings and how I can rotate. Our last question is, when watching my own demos or any demo from their pro players, what should I focus on? So the great thing about watching your own demos is that when you're playing, you don't have the time to actually pick apart your gameplay because you're just too focused on playing, right? You're thinking about what you're going to do that round. And then even when you're dead, you're watching your teammates. So you don't have that time to just sit back and have this bird's eye view of picking apart your own gameplay, which demos allows you to do. So, sitting back, grab popcorn and drink, and then really be honest with yourself and pick apart your gameplay to see all the mistakes that you made, and then thinking about what you could have done better. And then that way you're learning from your mistakes, and if you ever run into those situations again, you've prepared a solution. And when you're watching demos or pro players play a VOD, a stream, a match, whatever it is, I think there are two approaches, and they lie on the opposite sides or opposite spectrums. So on one side, I'm constantly observing and seeing what decisions that they did differently than what I would have made. So as I'm watching them live, I'm like, okay, well, in this situation, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to go right. But instead, they go left. And that's when it gets super interesting to me, because then I want to see what happens because they went left. Like, why did they go left? Why did they make this decision? What did they do with this decision? And then what was the result? And then when I'm thinking like this, I'm constantly expanding my gameplay because it's showing me different decisions and different results that I would have done differently. And I'm not even playing, right? So this is how you get better through other pro gamers, by observing their gameplay and expanding upon your own. And then the second thing on the opposite side is I'm also thinking they actually should have gone right. Like I'm thinking about the mistakes that they did made, like, oh, this was the mistake, right? Or 10 seconds ago, they should have gone right, but they went left. So this way I'm also learning from their mistakes, but I'm also expanding upon my own gameplay. So that does it for Q&A 2. If you've made it this far, hopefully you got some value. Give it a thumbs up if you did. And if you have your own questions, please submit them in the comments and try to be as specific as possible, because the really broad ones are difficult to answer. So, well, anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.